Welcome to Phoenix Masonry Live, a show that brings you talented Freemasons, Masonic authors, artists, craftsmen, and brothers of accomplishment. I am Frederick L. Milliken, Executive Director of Phoenix Masonry. We are here to celebrate our Freemasonry. That's what we do at Phoenix Masonry. We celebrate our Freemasonry. And I'm here celebrating today with Rhit Moore. Welcome to the show.
Good to be here, Fred. Hey, very excited.
Brother Rhit Moore is 40 years young. He has been married for 16 years with 2 kids. He lives in Burleson, Texas, which is just south of the DFW Metroplex. He was born in Texas and has always lived in or around Tarrant County. He makes his living as a realtor. As a child, you would probably find him on the Paluxy or Brazos River bank with a fishing pole in his hand or a wrench taking something apart to see how it worked. As a young man, he became interested in esoteric or ancient teachings, as he has a dad that really loved exploring those topics. He was 28 when he finally knocked on that outer door and began his Masonic journey in 2005. Truth be told, he joined because his cousin had joined and seemed to like it, and his dad offered to pay. As special as his dad and cousin made joining out to be, it fell short of anything special in his mind. In his eyes, his degrees were not bad and are very special to him now, but at the time he was just not opening up to it and was blinded to the depth of the craft. Shortly after being raised, he left the lodge not to return for over a year and a half until his dad appointed him as junior steward in 2007. From that point, Freemasonry began to blossom its wisdom to him, and as he says, I was hooked. He received his A certificate for the esoteric memory work prescribed by the Grand Lodge of Texas in 2008. He then progressed to senior deacon, then jumped to senior warden, and served as Worshipful Master of Fort Worth Lodge number 148, AF and AM, in 2010-2011. He was elected secretary in 2012 and has been serving in that role ever since. He is also a plural member of Tarrant Lodge number 942 and serves as secretary there as well. He served as District Deputy Grand Master in 2016 for past Grand Master Wendell Miller. He currently serves on the Grand Master's planning team for 2020 and was appointed District Education Officer for District 64A for 2018. Freemasonry has changed his life in more ways than he can describe and has truly made him a happier, freer man. Wow, Rhit, that's quite an opening bio.
Yeah, when you read it to me, it's like, man, what a privilege I've had to be a part of a fraternity, you know, that's given me these opportunities.
Well, you know, I was impressed when I visited Fort Worth Lodge number 148. You were doing something I just couldn't figure it out. But you had so many candidates going through. I think my first visit there were like 20 plus candidates going through the various degrees, like 13 entered apprentices, 7 fellow crafts, 3 master masons. I don't know if that was the exact amount. I don't know if it was exactly 20, but it was a heck of a larger number than I've seen in most other lodges, even across the nation. And I think that there's something that you're doing that we need to get out here, and we need to let the rest of the lodges in the United States know what it is. But I don't want to get ahead of the story. I want to start at the beginning. So let's
do it.
start at the beginning. Why and how did you join Freemasonry?
Well, you know, you kind of alluded to it in the bio that my cousin, Sonny Marchbanks, had joined. Then he brought my dad in and joined as well. They seemed to really like it. My grandfather finished his degrees. He was an entered apprentice for 28 years or so. Well, he finished the degree at the behest of my cousin as well. They all seemed to be liking it, and so one thing led to another. I had a petition in my hand. My dad was paying for it, and voila, I became a Mason. I had no idea the family history, you know, that I had with it. I had no idea of really what I was getting in altogether. I'd seen the square and compass, but didn't really know what, I didn't have an idea of the history of the craft, you know, so it really was one of those moments to where it was like, this is pretty cool, but, you know, I don't know if this is my cup of tea, kind of thing.
So why did you leave Freemasonry?
You know, the main reason was I joined in 2005. I was a young man in a sea of older generation, and it was hard to connect. So here I was with a young son, had a daughter on the way, and it came down to, you know, spending my time. Where was I going to do it? And things were a little bit boring. You know, and like I say, I couldn't connect with the older generation. It's not that I couldn't, it just wasn't happening. I wasn't putting the time in. And so I was gone. You know, I was a younger generation, just not mixing with that. Because there were no baby boomers in my lodge. There's very few. My dad was there. But other than that, it was the greatest generation. And, you know, we love our grandfathers, but we don't connect with them as well as we do father to son. You know, and so...
So what brought you back to Freemasonry?
That was Dad. He appointed me junior steward, and he appointed my older brother senior steward, and he didn't make it back. He didn't get back into the groove of it, and I did, and the cooking of the meals and serving meals kind of started opening up the opportunities Freemasonry, you know, presented to me, because, you know, as silly as it seems, you know, when I finally became a good steward and cooked a good meal and my brothers enjoyed it, I thought, wait a second, you know, I've got an opportunity to serve mankind, you know, as small as it seems, a good meal is a big thing. And it just started unfolding to me after that. Now, of course, my first meal, I burnt spaghetti, which is possible. I mean, boiling noodles, and I burnt the noodles. So it was a learning curve there, yeah.
So what got you to stay in Freemasonry?
Really what got me to stay was when I started doing the memory work, because my lodge had a lot of drama going on in it, and I'm not that kind of guy. I'm not interested in the gossip, and so what I started to do was go around to other lodges for 3 or 4 weeks at a time. I'd just go to every one of their floor schools, stated meeting, get to know the brethren, but my intentions there was to learn the work. And then I'd move on to the next lodge. About the time I'd had everybody's name memorized and they felt comfortable talking about their drama. So I would move on. Not that it was intense as what was going on at my lodge, but, you know, I wanted to learn that work and from different people, and just went around and started realizing the magic of visiting. You know, because when you're welcomed into a Masonic lodge like you've known guys for years, they taught me with open arms, you know, and they were really, you know, putting effort into it. And I thought, man, I've got to get more of this, you know. And then, of course, the memory work itself, there were many aha moments where things were tied together for me spiritually. And it was like, I'm digging in this hole deep, and have been since.
So let's talk a little bit about the history of Fort Worth Lodge number 148. Why has your lodge had a recent up and down journey?
So when I became a Mason in 2005, we were considered the lodge, I mean, we were on the verge of collapse. We were a lodge that you would come to become a past master. If you would affiliate with 148, you would more than likely, if you had aspirations, get put right in the senior warden's chair, and the next year progress to worshipful master. And they would go back to their home lodge afterwards. So our lodge had a few, you know, past masters that were very loyal. But by and large, they would go back to their lodge, so we didn't really have a structure to build from. And, you know, you have a few bad apples in there, and we'd build something up, and then somebody throw a monkey wrench in the whole process, and guys would leave. You know, then we'd start handing out petitions again once we got our website up and we built something up, and it was full of young guys and you know, all the things we're looking for, but didn't really have a connection with the older generation for that wisdom, and it collapsed again. So this third go round, I've been through 3 of those collapses, the last of which was my year's master, 2010 and 11. We've really boiled down what those problems were, what caused those, and made some true adjustments. Because things have changed.
What was its first fall from grace?
The first one in particular was that started the whole schism was we had a vote on raising dues, $10.
Oh, that's a tough one.
Yes. So we have in our bylaws that past masters don't pay dues. So one of our patriarchs stood up and said, as the discussion was going, he said, well, past masters don't pay dues, so I don't feel like we have a dog in this fight and we don't need to vote. Well, the worshipful master said, you can do whatever you want to do. You don't have to vote, you know, on this issue, but you certainly, you know, were more than welcome to. He told no one not to. Well, no past masters voted, and the dues increase passed. Well, one of the past masters that were at the meeting, another one, went to Grand Lodge, complained, ended up, worshipful master was reprimanded, he got very upset, then things were said, charges were threatened, and peace and harmony was out the window. So when his year was over, the senior warden that was coming up got in the mix of it as well. The worshipful master, you know, both of them were never to be seen again. And, you know, I can't say that I necessarily blame them, but you know, you got to understand, we can find problems with the brothers in Freemasonry all day. No one's perfect. And if you let that guy ruin the craft for you and what it holds for you in the future, you're robbing yourself out of some good opportunities, you know, because you're going to see some things that you don't agree with come out of brothers' mouths and their actions. Do your best to whisper good counsel and move on your journey, you know, but unfortunately they couldn't. So, first collapse.
How has the lodge been doing the last 4 years?
Wonderful. And step one was our investigation process, because by and large, really 4 years ago, 90% of our candidates came from our website, off the internet. No one knew them. So, you know, for the first time we ever know this person exists, they email us saying they're interested, how do I become a Freemason? And prior to this 4 years, it was, come on up, here's a petition, let's get you going and see how it works out. Now there's a whole, we have layers of security built in. You know, we have a questionnaire, essentially a survey that we mail out. It's about 35 questions from, you know, are you a felon? You'd agree to background checks, how much our dues are, degree fees, you know, all that pertinent information. Then if they answer those correctly, with a few introspective questions like why do you want to be a Freemason, make sure they got good grammar and can put coherent sentences together, because some can't, and they don't get invited up to lodge. You know, we tell them thanks but no thanks kind of thing, in a brotherly manner. But then we get invited up here and we meet them in the basement area in a little side conference room. That's as far as they go in this temple. And we meet them face to face. And we ask them open-ended questions. We do very little talking at this point, because they have all the information they need as far as time commitment, dues, degree fees, investigation, all that, to where we're listening to them and asking open-ended questions to make sure, you know, again, that they can support themselves, that they put coherent sentences together, and that they're going to be overall likable, you know, because we've had gentlemen up here that don't get invited back. Because after that first initial face-to-face meeting, we again all get together and say, what was your gut feeling on this guy? And if the hair stands up on anybody, they don't get invited back. It's rare at that point, but then they're invited to our dinner, and proceed through usually a 6 to 8 month process of what we earning their petition. They don't see a petition, quickest they're going to is 6 months. Now if a member of our lodge recommends them, like if I recommend someone to be a member, that's sped up a little bit, but more than likely he's going to spend 4 or 5 months to make sure he meshes, because just because he's a good friend of mine and I can vouch for his character, is he going to fit into the mold of our lodge and not disrupt peace and harmony? And it's not always the case. He could be a great man, but what we're doing as a lodge focuses more on this one area, and he would get more out of masonry if he went over to this other lodge. And we need to identify that from the get-go, and we do. Many people go to other lodges that have come to ours website initially, whether it be travel or just generally not going to fit.
You know, that sounds like what my NFL football team. I'm from Boston, and the New England Patriots. And you know, the Patriots, they won't draft somebody, or they won't go get somebody that doesn't fit the system,
Yeah.
and doesn't fit the general way of doing things.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't have the worth ethic.
Yeah.
You know, there's more requirements than you'd be a talented person.
Absolutely. You know, in our jurisdiction, we all do the same work, but every lodge should have its personality. You know, we have over 800 lodges in Grand Lodge, Texas, and we should all have a unique personality to each of us, to where one may do something more of a certain aspect, and it's going to fit their personality better, and they're going to get more out, they're going to be able to put more in. And we have a responsibility to identify that. We've got so wrapped up on this is a numbers game and we need more, and we're just hungry hippoing for more members and doing ourselves a disservice and doing them a disservice. Sure, I'll bring you in and make you a member, but you probably would have enjoyed your journey far more if you would have joined this lodge down the road. He's still your brother in the end, you know.
Yeah.
But we have to do that due diligence, because he's more than likely going to stay if he goes to a lodge he enjoys and meshes with better.
Right.
You know.
So, how are your degrees different from what they used to be?
We do them well.
You do them well.
We take great pride in that, and that's something that I can't express enough how organic that happened, because, you know, I quickly got my A certificate and I loved the work, and I took pride in my degree work since, you know, I started doing it in 2003, 2004. But it didn't catch on in our lodge until, you know, really and truly the last 3 or 4 years, when guys started seeing the power that could come behind doing a good degree. And as we started doing better and better degree work, we raised our degree fees naturally. And then things started happening to where, like, just out of nowhere, we all started wearing black. Black ties, black shirt, black suit. And white gloves eventually got worked into the mix. We wear all white leather aprons, so the officers aren't wearing their decorated aprons. We all look the same. Lights are dimmed in the room, so our faces are a little more shadowy, and, you know, you couldn't tell the difference in between one or the other, you know. And we think that makes a bigger impression on what's going on in the degree, and puts the focus on the candidate more than it does on, hey, look at that guy's pretty apron. You know, we're identical. You know, essentially Masonic twins. So
what occurs after a Master Mason has been raised?
that's the trick. You know, that's another part that we've really added into the mix, because after a Master Mason is raised, a lot of times he's just kind of dropped off and says, yep, you're going to get out of it what you put into it. And they've essentially just gotten through high school or college, if you will. They're still going to need some on-the-job training. You know, so you have to continue to mentor that brother as a Master Mason and set him on his path. One of the things that drove me off is you have so many Masons that will tell you this is the way it is. You know, this is what that symbol means, or this is, you know, how we do things. But Masonry is an introspective journey. You know, it's a self-improvement process, and that's going to be vastly different from one brother to the next. So we set them on that journey, kind of hone their skills at using those working tools that they were given during the degrees, so they can start hacking their own Masonic journey, you know, doing their own thing and giving them that freedom. And it's really and truly caught on. You know, the guys have pride in their lodge and they're proud to be a Mason.
It almost sounds as if your lodge follows a path of traditional observance lodges. Would you say that that's a mischaracterization, or that you've adopted some parts but not all?
Absolutely. No, that was a huge part. My cousin Sonny Marchbanks, who got me in originally, I think it was like 2006 or 7, sent me the outline of how to become a TL Lodge. And we kicked around that idea. How do we become a full-blown TL Lodge? And even were kind of sold on the idea for a little while. But then eventually realized, you know, there were aspects that we loved and aspects that we just didn't see quite fitting in the culture of our area we're in. So we cherry-picked. And there are a lot of things that we took from that. Really the most was the inspiration of doing it our own way. Because we realized, hey, there's brothers out there that took this to the next level because that's what they wanted as a group. So we sat down, we wrote mission, vision, you know, and declaration of principles, and then just kind of proceeded on our direction from there.
When you say we, you know, I mean, you kind of strike me as a Mason with a mission. And would I be wrong in saying that a lot of all this is, you're the big force behind it?
Well, you know, the thing about that is you know, if you asked any of the brothers in lodge, I'm sure that they would certainly give me a lot of the credit. But I'm just practicing what those degrees teach us. You know, I learned the memory work. I do good degree work. I really don't feel like I do much above and beyond what the typical Mason, you know, should be involved in. And I don't say that, you know, that everybody has to learn the memory work. I just mean I found my niche and I went after it. So I'm doing what I love. And that seems selfish, but that's my priority in Freemasonry. I'm not going to do it if I don't enjoy it. Now, granted, there's some, you know, give and take there, because I'm part of committees and things that I don't necessarily think it's a great thing. You know, I might help with a fundraiser or two, but that's not why I joined. You know, I joined for a different reason. So the majority of my time and effort is put in that area, and it's given me that opportunity to be a Mason that's been a part of these changes, you know, or inspired others to be a part of it as well, because, you know, while maybe I might have started that spark, the flame of 148 would be nothing without the other guys. You know, I'm glad to be a part of it and a part of that inspiration, you know, but the lodge itself and its success is totally a group effort. My success as a Mason comes from me just doing what I love in Masonry, finding my niche and just digging that hole.
You sound like Tom Brady.
You keep going back to the Patriots. We're in Fort Worth.
I know. You know, there's a lot of lodges across the nation that are struggling, and you know, they really want to grow. Is this a model that could be adapted by other lodges across our USA?
There's certain aspects of the model that can, and there's certain aspects that, you know, you should. I think for a long time we've tried to really put us all in one streamlined, you know, this is the way you've got to do it if you want to be a successful lodge. But, you know, not all of what we do is going to work for another lodge. But things like the investigation process do need to change. You know, it really dawned on me that in really 70s and prior, people didn't move a lot. You know, you got a job, you worked at it, and then you got your pension and retired. So you lived, say in Fort Worth, you probably, if you didn't live here your whole life, you've worked here for the last 10 or 15 years, you know, and somebody knew you when you came to join that local lodge. You either worked with them, so there was you had a real resource into their character, and guys knew. So back then, you didn't even give a petition to a man because they already knew he's a bad character. But if they knew him, it was good. They've known him for 10 years. Here's a petition, and it worked. You know, we had good men of good character. But nowadays, it's not the case. You know, when you bring in members off the internet where they're coming from, you've got to investigate them thoroughly. You know, we've had guys that from it just wasn't the time, you know, whether they be in school or, you know, whatever the case may be, they realized through a process that it wasn't the time for them, or we realized it and told them, or just people that absolutely do not need to be Freemasons. You know, you're not going to find that out in a month. You've got to put them through the ringer, you know, because once they're in, it's hard to get them out, you know. So you want to make sure that if you're going to give your time and effort to support that brother, he's going to reciprocate for you or some other brother in need down the road, you know, and have that commitment to it. And I think you can find that out in 6 to 8 months. You can get a real good idea.
You take your time with the whole process.
Absolutely.
Would you say that that's a kind of a secret, not rushing it?
Oh, wait the time with patience, right? You know, and we kind of put that into everything, you know, from our entered apprentices. We don't rush them. If they take more than a year, so mote it be, you know, that happens. They tell us when they're ready. You know, if you're ready, we'll proceed on if they've done all the necessary, you know, requirements. But we really slowed down the whole process altogether, except for our stated meetings. We speeded those up. But our mentor program's another good example. We call it Big Brother program. And while every lodge needs a mentor program, what we do in ours isn't going to work, you know, it isn't going to fit every lodge. But every lodge does need a mentor program of some sort, you know. If that's not apparent from entered apprentice, fellow craft, I mean, we're based on a system that had apprentices and masters, you know, and mentors. So I think that's like lesson one, you know, you need a mentor. Whether, you know, I have several still. So, and you may move from mentor to mentor as you progress, but you got to keep those mentors going, and as they're coming through, make sure they've got one.
Sounds successful to me. I know that, again, I say and repeat myself, that when I visited your lodge, there were about 20 going through the degrees, various stages of the degrees. Do you have any sort of retention problem? Look, when I visited you, and I say there were about 20 brothers going through the degrees, how many of those still come? Do you have a lot of dropouts?
No, not anymore. And that's something that was kind of a byproduct of our candidate process, because on that last collapse our lodge had, we realized that we were initiating people that were, it wasn't their time to be a Freemason. Maybe they were earlier. We did a disservice to them, you know, and they did a disservice to us, kind of a two-way street. So we bolstered that investigation process, and once they put in that much time and effort, you know, and then raised our degree fees, you know, all this thing starts coming together, they're a lot more committed than if they came in and had a petition and were a member in 2 months. You know, kind of the old adage, easy to pick up, easy to put down. Hard to pick up, hard to put down. So we make it hard to pick up. You know, and we lose quite a few on the front end, but those aren't on our books. That's not a part of our statistics, to where we were losing a lot of EAs because they didn't have time to get to know what they're getting into. And once they finally realized, you know, that this is what it all encompasses, it wasn't for them. So now we have this huge loss as entered apprentices on the books, to where if we just took time by and large, we wouldn't have that loss. You know, this fraternity's not for everybody. And then the guys that do make it will feel like they're in a room full of men that earned it. You know, and they're in something special, you know, part of something unique.
So this is sort of like profile.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to give the impression that we're elitist, but we make good men better. You know, we make good men better. And you've got to come in as a Mason at heart from the get-go. And you can pick that up. You really have to have a conversation with the man to think, does he have does he live his life by the principles of brotherly love, relief, and truth? You know, by and large, again, we all have our slip-ups, but do you have that rough ashlar that doesn't have a crack in it, to where when you start working on it to make it a perfect ashlar, it just falls in half and just can't hack the pressure? You know, I really feel like, and we've had success with it, you know, by and large, that after 6 to 8 months, you have a good impression. Now, we've had guys that's taken over a year before they got a petition, because, you know, you have a little quirky, you know, conversation with them or something, and you wanted to get more out of them to see where that goes. So there's no definite time, except for it's going to take you more than 6 months to get a petition, but it may take you longer, because we go around the room with the majority of active members and goes, how do you feel about giving this brother a petition now? How do you feel about it? And if anybody says, we double back and regroup until we all feel comfortable. Because we took the focus off of bringing in new members and put the focus on the members we have, and now they feel like they're a part of something special and they want to protect that, you know. Because once you get into the fold at 148, you know, you've got some responsibilities that we expect you to adhere to, you know.
So, you lodges across the nation, you need to listen to this. Listen, I have some pictures, and you supplied me with some beautiful pictures. So let's go over some of these as an opportunity. Now, first I say I visited the lodge here a couple of times, and so I have 3 pictures here. And it shows me with the group, shaking hands with you, and then I made a donation to the lodge, and those were, it was really a fun time here.
Well, I mean, it was historic. It was the first visit from Prince Hall to our lodge. So absolutely historic. It was neat to be a part of. Of course, it's always fun when you have visitors from other jurisdictions that, you know, get to see things. I think maybe it was the first or second lodge in Tarrant County that had a Prince Hall visit this way, you know, so it was really a cool thing to be a part of.
Okay, and then we have you with this brother.
This is Arlington Heights Lodge over in West Fort Worth, and this is the Worshipful Master Daniel Ward when I was making my official visit as District Deputy Grand Master, and we just kind of hit it off. I mean, I hadn't been, I think it was my first visit to Arlington Heights, or second, and they've got kind of a young crowd going, and they're really building some things up. So, you know, that was a great evening.
Okay, and you with brother here?
Yeah, Brother Jack. This was his raising. So after my visit from the previous picture, you know, I've been in contact with that lodge. We're doing a lot of things with them now and building a good relationship. And I went over and helped confer this brother's degree. I think I helped with his fellowcraft as well, but it was a really fun occasion coming together as 2 lodges to do a degree. So mark that with a picture.
I've done that before, and it's a special occasion.
Yeah.
Now we have the picture with the gavels.
Yeah. So this is Brad Billings. A lot of you may have seen his pictures or know him by Flat Brad, I guess. But this is our travel gavel that I'm holding from the 64th District, and Brad Billings there is holding just a regular gavel for comparison. But we have a, you know, competition. You may have heard of the travel gavel, where we have to have 7 or more members to visit another lodge at their stated meeting or degree, and if they have the travel gavel, we take it from them back to our lodge. So it's a friendly way to promote visitation.
I've done that.
Yeah.
Always enjoyed it. And this is a group photo. Was it a special occasion of any kind?
This actually was the travel gavel. When we held it, there were 2 lodges that came to get it. I think there was total, we didn't have everybody in the picture, there was over 60 brothers that came from different lodges. I can't remember who actually took it that night. It may have been Hanley with like 13 members there. So that was a great evening right there, because that was, rarely have our lodge room that full.
And Here you are with another brother. Is this, are you at?
That's our worshipful master this year, Greg, Greg Wright, and installing Marshall at his installation. It was a really special occasion. Greg and I, we've become pretty good friends as well as brothers, so it was a fun moment for me to kind of jewel him, as I should say.
And then you're here with this brother.
This is one of my first mentors, Brother Bob Holmes. This gentleman here, man, where do I even start with this guy? He's a Mason. I don't want to say he doesn't know his work, but he didn't know it as well as others that I learned it from. He knew it okay. But he showed me a different aspect of Masonry as far as getting involved and being of help and being of service on different levels. I mean, he's the curator of this library. And he was so involved and seemed to know everything about history. I was just like, man, how does this guy do it? And I asked him one time, how do you have the time? And he said, I hear people say all the time, I don't have the time to do that. And he said, I tell them, you've got all you're ever going to get. And it hit me right in between the eyes. It was just the moment I needed to hear that piece of wisdom that basically said to me, you know what, it's time to get on your pony and saddle up and start doing something. Be of service, do things that make you feel good to be a human, and he made Masonry something different for me. So, big mentor for me.
Right. Now this looks like a very distinguished brother.
This is the man right here. Mason, I don't know that I'd be a Mason if it wasn't for this man.
Wow.
He's a past master of Fort Worth 148. I might be a Mason, but I'd probably be NPD. But he's the guy that took me, he saw my interest in the work and that I was picking it up, had a little love with it. And he's the one that I'd go to his house, we'd sit for hours learning the work. There wasn't a lot of small talk. You'd walk in that man's house, he would say, here's my wife Rose. We'd say hi to his wife. We'd walk in, he'd already have you a glass of water sitting there, and we'd get right to work. And, he might explain a little bit of the esoteric meanings here and there, but by and large it was a regiment. And he knew where the these went, that's went, no contractions in Masonry. But more than that, he was a quiet man that just was always there. All of those ups and downs, this man was there. He was there trying to teach the worshipful master his work. Even guys that fought him on it or that really tried and just couldn't get it, he was always there to continue to help them. Where I would see so many past masters just get frustrated, and just kind of throw their hands up, somehow he persevered and pushed through that. And I just kind of sat on the sidelines, watching that year after year after year, and it was like, man, he can keep an even keel through almost anything. And it's like, how does he do that, And so I just latched on to him really closely and hopefully took away a lot of that, you know what I mean? Because I kind of understand now, yeah, you're going to go through rough seas, but give it a minute, it's going to smooth out. It's going to be good times again.
Well, for the benefit of, and we're viewed all over the United States, Canada, Great Britain, Europe, for the benefit of other lodges and grand lodges around the nation, you do, or up until recently anyway, you've done all your work just by word of mouth. You don't have a ritual book.
No.
A cipher book.
Yeah. No, when I first joined, that was totally illegal. Although it's funny, if you look back historically, the amount of those books purchased while they were illegal was almost the same amount of Masons that came through Texas. And I get a lot of things from widows or families that donate older Masons stuff. They had code books in them. So it was out there, but I wasn't aware of it until later as a Mason. But yeah.
So you did all your work by just repetitive practicing with somebody. Mouth to ear.
Yeah, exactly.
All your.
Yeah. Now, once I realized that was out there, I snatched it up and put the polish on with it. But now I'm even to the point to where, because it's something I work at try to weekly. I go study with some guys because the book now doesn't serve me much of a purpose, you know, in the sense that I'm just missing things that I've learned wrong, putting in these and that's, to where I'm back to strictly mouth to ear again, you know, because after so long of just hammering it in, it kind of starts sticking with you, and you got to have somebody say, no, that's wrong, because even if I'm reading it right out of there, I'm still saying it the way I had it memorized in my head, and it's memorized wrong.
Yeah, my problem has been coming from Massachusetts, and twice past master there, coming into Texas, and the ritual is not a whole lot different, but slightly different.
Yeah.
And then going into Prince Hall, and then the ritual again is slightly different. And whenever I'm asked to do some ritual, I sort of go back to Massachusetts ritual.
No,
it isn't really all that different, but
yeah,
just
it's kind of like
a word here or there.
But that man, Sam Levacy there, he lived to be 100 years old and was installed as worshipful master at River Oaks Lodge at 100 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. We had like 120 people in attendance. I mean, we top shelved it, you know, had a great time. He was tickled pink. I mean, just had a blast. I got to be a part of his installation as well. He passed away shortly after, but man, we had a good time.
Yeah.
That was his 50 year too, as 100 years old. He became a Mason late, 50 obviously, but boy, he dug in, you know. The thing that he said to me, like Bob, that really hit home with me was he wasn't a college educated man. He said Freemasonry was the best education I ever received. I was like, what do you mean Freemasonry is the best education? You know, it's like, were we supposed to be learning stuff in there? This isn't just a, you know, a boys club, man's club kind of thing. And that's when things started cracking open for me. You know, it's like, I'm supposed to be learning this stuff. You know, they're not going to tell me what to do like my mom and dad used to do all the time. You know, I'm a grown man now. You know?
Well, one of my themes, both as master and here in Phoenix Masonry, has been celebrating your Freemasonry. And by that I mean doing big things up, you know, proudly doing large events, Masonic events.
Mm-hmm.
Do you do anything that's, you know, a large event, like end up having 100 to 200 Masons in your lodge because you're putting on something super special, or go to something that's...
We've got one coming up, which we'll talk about here in a minute.
We'll talk about that.
But we've had a few, you know, our 150th celebration, which we had, that was, you know, 8 or 9 years ago, some time ago. We had quite a few members here. We've had a golden trial and a 50-year pin for members that are very, you know, well known, to where we've had over 100 in attendance. We just had a black tie birthday for our lodge as well. I think we had like 89 or 90 folks there. So we definitely, you know, we enjoy hosting those kind of things here. But the need is just starting to build back up to where, you know, it just kind of, you know, like our district Masters, Wardens, and Secretaries Association that all lodges are a part of used to require something like this for to meet at, but lately, you know, you have 30 people show up to it, if that, and that'll fit in any lodge around Tarrant County.
Yeah.
So,
I know in the lodge I came from, Massachusetts, Paul Revere Lodge, we did ladies' nights twice a year, and they became rather large affairs.
yeah.
And do you do any of that? Do you do a past master's night, or a ladies' night, or a widows?
We do a ladies' night for sure, and we do need to do a better job of following up with our widows. The thing that we lost was that connection to them through the older past masters, you know, that spent their whole life with these women because they were best friends and brothers with their husbands. So it's really hard for us to get a hold of a lot of widows, as we've tried in the past, and contact information we don't have, or they've moved, that kind of thing. So it's a little tougher for us because we lost that bridge, but we spend a lot of time appreciating our wives for what they do. You know, we do several things a year for ladies' night. And when I say we had a black tie birthday ball, we did that for our wives. You know, they got dressed up, we got dressed up. But the presentation that I gave that night was pretty much geared towards the history of our lodge and guys being good Masons for their wives, you know.
Yeah.
To show our appreciation.
Well, we have one more brother in a picture here. We don't leave this man out either, do we?
No, we don't.
He looks like a real jovial, fun-loving brother.
Absolutely. Now this guy here, I wouldn't be a Mason if it wasn't for him. That's my dad.
Oh, that's your dad.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
That's my
wow.
dad. And that's him at his golden trowel. He's a two-time past master of Fort Worth. And like I say from the beginning, he paid for my degrees, and he's like, you're going to love it. And of course, Masonry had already started kind of opening up to him, but it took a little longer. And, you know, my dad's the kind of guy that just kind of shows me the water and waits for me to drink, which is what he did. But, you know, the father-son Freemasonry, you know, growing up, my dad was a dad. He disciplined me when I needed it, and I needed it a lot. So, you know, we didn't get along the greatest. I turned 18 and we started becoming friends and having different conversations, but Freemasonry afforded me a relationship with my dad I never thought I'd have. Most sons can't dream of having. We drive to lodge every Monday together, you know. I pick him up, we got a 30-minute drive there and drive home, and the whole way there and back, we're like, you know, little girls talking about, what can we do for the, you know, to help the investigation process? Well, what about this candidate that's coming through? What do you think, you know? Well, you know, what did you think about this presentation? And we have some very deep conversations about how to improve ourselves, how to improve Freemasonry, what we thought about this event, and it just, I mean, opened the whole thing up to me for, you know, being able to share it with my pops.
Well, for the benefit of the other jurisdictions watching this, explain what the Golden Trial is.
So the Golden Trial is it's the Masonic Oscar. It is the highest award that you can receive outside of your apron, you know, but it's a peer recognized award. The members of your lodge vote and give that to you. It can only be given away once a year, but it's for Master Masons. Don't have to be an officer or a past officer. It's for Master Masons that show outstanding service. This was the first one we've given away in 7 years. It had kind of gotten repetitive in our lodge, so we cut it off and said, you know, we're going to make this a prestigious award again. And the one before we gave to this, we gave to my mentor Bob Holmes, who we had over 100 in attendance, and didn't really have a candidate until my dad came along, you know. So we got to honor him this last year. I got to present and MC that event, which was phenomenal. It was great. And in that picture as well, he has a picture of a floor trowel that you used to lay like linoleum floor and things like that, which I did with my dad as a young man to earn a little extra money, which he did with his dad, who was a Mason as well. So it was special. I bought one at Home Depot and painted it gold, so I gave him the golden floor trowel as well.
That's nice.
Because I got a lot of lessons in Freemasonry inadvertently learning how to lay floor.
Okay, you have a big and beautiful Masonic temple. Mm-hmm. So, and I have some pictures of that too that we'll be showing. Can you give us some of the history of this building? This is a great big building.
It's beautiful. We're very, very lucky, you know, because we get a lot of draw and interest in our lodge from this building. And it comes to us because we're one of the few that have a modern website in the area, and because we've been on the internet so long. So when you search, you know, our website's been up 10 or 15 years longer than most, so naturally it comes up first. So we get a lot of interest, and we're lucky. But this building originally was the brainchild of Stephen Cook, the picture there behind you. He was kind of the leader of putting this together. And originally they wanted to draw the Grand Lodge of Texas here to Fort Worth. So they designed and put together a very elaborate building. I think it was 4 times the size of this one, were the original plans. It's going to have 2 bowling alley lanes, you know. I think it had a little swimming pool area. really huge building, many pillars up front. Well, they did a lot of research at the time before they were getting ready to build, and talked to other Grand Lodges to where they said, we built too big. You know, we don't use a lot of that space, and so you should go smaller. And they did that, which eventually came to this building when they completed in 1931. I mean, it was right in the middle of the Depression, but they'd already raised the money beforehand. You know, they were raising money for $1 million building, and I think we're, you know, a third of the way there or so, and scaled it back to where this building cost, I think it was $350,000, $400,000 to build in 1931. And they already had all the money. So when they did build it, the only thing they did change was they, I don't want to say fired contractors they had hired, but they had planned to hire, and then they doubled back and hired local masons once the Depression hit to help build this. So yeah, I think we're coming up on 80 years or so of this building being here, 84 years maybe.
All right, you did, isn't this declared a historic building?
It is. It's a Texas it's a Texas landmark, and we just got added on the National Historical Registry as well. So it's a double doozy, and that's mainly because, you know, our brothers that built this had the luxury of a large pool to draw from. Our lodge at one point had over 2,200 members, and that wasn't uncommon for the other 3 lodges that meet here and the other lodges in Tarrant County. So if they all chipped in a little bit, they could build something like this relatively easy. And I don't think that they had the foresight that masonry would drop like it did. Who would have that, you know, because it was just, I mean, complete fall in membership. And we struggle with paying for this place. I mean, we've all heard horror stories of temples, beautiful buildings being lost due to money, basically.
Right.
And that's what led us to doing this, to where now that we're on the historical registry, you know, it opens us up to certain grants. People that donate money to preserve places are more likely to donate to something on the historical registry. So we're hoping to get a little help on that end, but have plans as well to start fixing it up from the inside out.
Well, who all meets here?
So Fort Worth 148, my lodge and the Shrine were instrumental in putting this together. The Shrine had a place out on Lake Worth. I think it was right near Casino Beach or something. Huge, beautiful place that eventually burnt down. So they needed a new home. And that organization combined with Fort Worth really spearheaded the project and put together the money, the land. Scottish Rite moved in, Fort Worth Valley of the Scottish Rite. Grotto meets here. Let's see, 4 Blue Lodges, Fort Worth 148, Julian Field Lodge, Cook Peavy Lodge, and Panther City Lodge. Oh, I know. Oh, Chapter and Council, Commandery, York Rite. That whole giddy up as well. I mean, that's a beautiful, what we call the asylum.
So you got York Rite, Scottish Rite, Shrine, and 4 Blue Lodges.
4 Blue Lodges.
DeMolay and Rainbow meet here?
DeMolay, Rainbow. I knew I'd leave some out.
So you got a lot of people to pay dues, to pay for the building.
Absolutely.
Because it's such a magnificent building, do you hold district meetings here and in area conferences?
We do, and like I said before, it used to be almost necessary to hold them here because our lodge room, like for instance, ours seats 160, where a lot of lodge rooms may seat 70 or so. And so you needed a larger area to host those kind of meetings. But nowadays, it's really not that necessary, and they've taken to the practice of moving them around. So it might be in South Fort Worth, North Fort Worth next month, you know, and we will end up here, but it all comes down to now who will host these events. And our lodge, unfortunately, wasn't in a position recently. You know, we've been talking about it more and more, but more so just becoming part of the leadership of those groups than hosting them. Get them back to where we need to be here.
Okay, let's shift gears.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about the Grand Lodge of Texas and Prince Hall recognition.
Yes.
Were you involved with this, with the negotiations at all, or involved in the process?
No, not anymore in the sense that, you know, I was a very vocal supporter, sometimes to the point of getting myself in some hot water, you know, because we were having picnics and posting pictures, you know, on our Facebook feed or whatever, long before we even had mutual recognition, you know, when they still considered we were still completely apart. We were going to picnics, that we were getting invited to Prince Hall Brothers, you know, here to go hang out at a picnic. And it got us in a little bit of hot water. But no, I wasn't directly involved in any way, you know, with the negotiation. That was all done way above my pay grade.
How smoothly do you think the recognition process played out?
You know, I think it played out really almost as smoothly as it could. I would like to think that we could have just went straight to full recognition, full visitation. But after really, you know, because initially I'm thinking, oh, this is just, you know, this isn't right. This is separate but equal kind of thing. And I've had a few things that were explained to me to where, you know, had to be added to Lodge's book of Lodge's constituents. So when you visit, we can check and make sure your lodge is valid. We didn't know, because there's a few clandestine groups in Texas, and a lot of them claim to be Prince Hall in nature, although there's only one, and we didn't have any way to identify that at that point. So I see the validity in having to slow the process. Hey, let's get recognition, and then we'll work the back channels to get visitation. But it took me a minute to wrap my head around that, you know, to where I was so glad to see that finally go away, to where we get back on the level, because that was the one hiccup in the whole process that I try not to think of as a stain on the process, but I do. You know, I think we could have done it a little smoother. But in the end, it's not a perfect world. We still have issues to tackle on those, on race, you know, on our side, both sides. And I think that process, because we asked a few lodges to go and weren't granted permission. And I respected that. I don't want to go anywhere that's going to disrupt that lodge's peace and harmony. You know, if there's one past master that has something against visitation, whether it be race related or other related, I don't want to disrupt peace and harmony in a lodge, because I don't want it done in mine either. That's crucial. That's the chief strength and support.
Yes.
You know?
So clue us in on the proper etiquette, traditions, and other things brothers should know if they want to take advantage of the new visitation laws between jurisdictions.
That's funny. It reminds me of the story of Arlington Lodge 438. They, I believe, were the first lodge in Tarrant County that went to Prince Hall and visited. So they got all dressed up. A lot of them wore tuxedos because we've heard it's a lot more dressed up over there. And Prince Hall, in return, the lodge there, and I can't recall the name of it, forgive me, but they dressed down a little bit and went business casual. So here they come walking in all tuxedos, and in order to make them feel welcome, they dressed down a little bit, and they were in business casual. They got a big kick out of it, you know, and had an absolute blast. It was a moment, created a moment for them to bond uniquely as brothers, because it was kind of a silly faux pas, you know, but I thought, you know, there are some things maybe we should know to expect, you know, when we visit. You know, because when you come, either way, you know, it shouldn't matter about the dress, but you should at least come business casual, you know. But if I'm visiting another jurisdiction, I'm going to do my best to wear a suit and tie, you know, just to show my respect for their fraternity and their jurisdiction. If you come this way, have your dues card ID, and being from another jurisdiction, we have to try you as well. So you're going to have to answer a few questions and answers. So be ready for that. And if you visit 148 in particular, we're going to examine you on the degree that we're opening in, you know. So we may go all the way up to masters if you plan on visiting again. That way we can vouch for you for any, you know, any stage of the process. But once you visit once, you know, you've got somebody to vouch for you. You come on back anytime, easy peasy, because it doesn't take but a minute to kind of fill out the culture. You know.
Okay. Let's talk about some programs you lodge may or may not do.
Mm-hmm.
I know you operate a lodge podcast. Tell us about how this is going and what you talk about.
Well, that was one of those things that I started because I love, it's something I wanted to do. I saw a lot of value. I saw me getting a lot of value in doing a podcast. And thank goodness that I got Gabriel Yagish. He's one of my co-hosts. He does a lot of the tech stuff on the tech side when it comes to editing and things like that. He's great, which took a lot off me because I've got to upgrade my computer for sure now that I'm on podcast, doing that kind of stuff to where I can help him out with that. But it really did better than we thought. And I'd be remiss without mentioning Grant Gate and Billy Hamilton that are co-hosts with me as well. They really add a lot to the mix to where, we kind of started it as a way. My initial podcast was myself, and it was intro for the candidate. So when guys would come up and we'd meet them off the internet, we'd invite back, I'd give them a link to that podcast and say, go listen to it, and this has all the information you need to know. So it would have degree fees and things like that, all the pertinent information. Then it grew into me kind of reading some old Lightfoot, which is a past Grand Master of ours, articles that he had wrote, and I was listening to him, and I was like, man, this is kind of boring. And I listened to a few other podcasts where they had conversation. I was like, this is the route we need to go. So grabbed Gabriel Yagish, grabbed Grant Gates. We started out. Grant got busy, travels a lot, so we brought in Billy Hamilton, who's an affiliate member of ours from Oklahoma. He's been a member for like a year now, and I mean, it's hit the ground running. Masonry's kind of opened up for him as well, and very knowledgeable guy. And we expected for it to be a tool for our lodge to kind of spread a little light and have those conversations we didn't have time to at lodge. And it's grown way beyond that. I mean, we're not huge, but we add a lot of value to a lot of brothers across the state of Texas. I'm always surprised. Grand Lodge recently, I had 4 or 5 guys when I introduced myself. Oh, you're the guy that does the podcast. And I'm just shocked. Guys from San Antonio, Corpus Christi, all over Texas. And of course, it's all over the world as well. I mean, there's a lot of different countries that have downloaded our podcast. So I'm just shocked, and it really opened my eyes to how hungry these younger Masons are, myself included, for education. And just conversing about Freemasonry.
What was your favorite show? That's a tough question.
It is a tough question. Probably my favorite show is the next one. The
next one.
I enjoy the conversations I have with them because I kind of walk in and depend on my experience in Freemasonry. When we have brothers on like Roberto Sanchez, who wrote a book, we go read their book and do a little interview. But a lot of times it's just us discussing issues that lodges have and how we've dealt with them in ours. It kind of give you some points to start thinking from. But probably one of my favorite that I think is most important, it's called Guarding the West Gate. It was our 2nd episode. Of course, it's all about our investigation process and how important that is and how much it's changed. Like I said earlier, where somebody in your lodge probably knew that man petitioning in the 70s or before. It's not the same. And in the same token, the men that are joining are looking to have to put in some effort. They want to take on that hero's quest. And if it just becomes something that's easily given to them time after time, they start sensing little value. They don't get a lot out of it. But if they have to work for it, whether it's consciously or subconsciously for them, they start getting a lot more value out of it, and they want to do more, And it was really counterintuitive because it got wrapped up in the numbers game, and you hear it all the time, especially in our jurisdiction, because we have the longest catechism in the world, as I'm told, for an entered apprentice to memorize in order to progress. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but it is a lot. And there's always talk about shortening it. And it's the exact opposite of what these men that are joining want. Whether they, like I say, whether it's consciously or subconsciously that they'll admit they want to do all that work, when they put it in, you see the value they're getting out of it.
I've written a number of articles on what I call searchers or seekers. And there's a lot of men in our country, maybe they're not churched, and maybe they they're going through life as young in their 20s, and you know, it's work, 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 family, kids, payments, bills, and you know, after a while they say, you know, is that all there is?
That's it.
Is that all there is to life?
Yeah.
All right, and they start thinking about the greater thoughts of the universe.
Yeah.
And that's where we come in, don't you think?
100%. You know, I listened to Robert Hurd Mason from Colorado. We flew him in to give a presentation, and he alludes to those rites of passages that have been around for so long. You know, you still see them like with the bar mitzvah and the quinceañera and things like that. And for men, for so long, it's been war. You know, you become a man when you join the army or military, and you go through a war kind of thing. You know, yeah, and you do. You're those brotherhood, or that opening up of what's important in life, happens in the middle of a battle. I'm sure. I can't imagine when all of a sudden everything disappears and you're not really worried about your life, but you're worried about that man's life next to you and making sure he stays safe. And you're putting yourself in harm's way for that. That's an extreme that you get out of war, but it opens up what is important in life. You know, it's brotherhood, it's humankind, and you get a piece of that. Not as intense, but you get a piece of that in our fraternity. I think that's why we get a lot of police and firemen that join, because they're really into that brotherhood, and why we get a lot of military that join, because they've had a taste of that and they want to continue it. Or, like you just said, you have men that haven't joined the military or had anything like that. They do go to college, get married, have kids. They check all those boxes in society. You know, may or may not do the church thing every Sunday, and then they go, what else is there? You know, I've lost contact with all my buddies in high school. I still talk to a few guys from college here or there. You know, you just start feeling that pull for more. And Freemasonry lets you get hands-on with life. You know,
I've often said that if you're a policeman or fireman, or if you're on the offensive or defensive line of a football team, you know what brotherhood is all about.
you got it. Absolutely. No.
So, let me ask, what kind of social programs you put on, either inside or outside the lodge room?
Oh, man, that is something our lodge has gotten very good at. And I think it's really and truly, if you're looking at improving your lodge, that's step one. You've got to have social activities outside of lodge. You know, that's where the deal gets done. You know, you hear it all the time. The deals happen on the golf course. You've got to have those outside conversations with brothers to where eventually they start feeling comfortable with you. After they hear you've been through the same struggles, you know, you've had the same angst, and, you know, you worry about the same things, and the good deeds that you've done or the struggles you've had in life. And once you have time to get all that out of the way, you can start depending on them to be a part of those ideas you come up with. Because you can sit around the table outside of lodge and talk all day long about how we're going to do this great new thing at lodge, whether it be a fundraiser or investigation, or how we're going to teach, and then everybody 30 minutes later goes home and there's no real connection between the brothers. You know, you're not going to get the support that you had initially. But if these guys, and I call it the foxhole mentality, I'm not military, but I love the service, and I'm very intrigued at how they, you know, the bonds that are created there. But that foxhole mentality that, you know, when my brother puts up the bat signal, I'm going to be there because I know he needs my help. And, you know, that's my friend, you know, because brother's a real unique title. You know, you're called brother the instant you take that EA obligation. And in my lodge, I may know you 8-9 months at that point. Do I trust you like I trust my friend I've known for 15 years and have had some intimate conversations with? No. You know, that's human nature. I love you and I'm going to take care of you as a brother, but there's still levels we go through to get to. You know what I mean? You have varying, you get closer to others, you know, and so we need time to get to know each other. And once you do that, guys come running. They stick together. Because there's going to be moments at lodge that are boring and are mundane and are tough. You're not going to feel like going to lodge. You had a hard day at work, but you know, hey, my bros are going to be up there. I need to be there for them. And you usually walk out happier for it, you know.
It's what I call the lessons of the 5 points of fellowship.
Yeah. That's
And that's all we'll say about it. What kind of community involvement or charitable work does your lodge do?
So we're getting better, but it's not our focus.
Right.
That's not, you know, if that is the driving force for joining Freemasonry, we've got the lodge for you, but it's not us.
So that let me interrupt you, so that the secret to success here is not becoming a service club.
No, no.
I agree.
Yeah. Most of the guys that join us are either doing that at church,
Right.
and they're still looking for more, or they've done that on their own in some form or fashion, you know, because I see all the time when I'm investigating these millennials to where they've traveled to other countries after devastation and helped rebuild countries, you know, on their own dime, flying over just to be a part of it, but they're still looking for more. And that's where we come in. So if we go do the same thing service-wise, they're not going to stick. Don't get me wrong. It's a part of what we do here. You know, you've got to be involved in your community, and directly or indirectly. But charity and supporting is part of what we do. But we do that well. I mean, I hear it all the time. We give $3 million away a day as Masons. I don't know where that number comes from, but between the Shrine Hospital, Scottish Rite, all that the Square and Compass does, what falls under that, whether it be in England, whether it be Prince Hall, you know, F&AM, AF&AM, all of it. We do a lot of charity, and we do it well. But the education and things have fallen to the wayside. So, on a whole, those quadrants should equal out. But in the individual lodges, one may be more geared towards another. So we do charity, you know, we have a toothbrush program. In like the last 5 years, I think we've given away over 1,500 toothbrushes to first graders in low-income areas. You know, we do scholarships. Again, mainly, if you have a kid in our lodge that's graduating, they get the scholarship. If they're going to college, you know, you can apply, sure, but we're not going to give it away to someone outside. You know, we're here to support our brothers. That's what we should do. We have a perpetual scholarship with TCU where we donated a big lump sum of money. So that'll be around as long as TCU's around, which our lodge helped create as well. So it was really unique coming all back together. So we do quite a bit when it comes to charity. I say quite a bit because we pale in comparison to a lot of lodges, but it's just not our niche.
Yeah,
You know?
I understand. Have you made any long trips together?
Oh yeah, we do. We've kind of made a tradition. Well, Grand Lodge, first of all, that's the first. It's Waco. It's about an hour away, but we all get hotels. We stay close, you know, and have a great time. But we've kind of made it a tradition as well to send our officers to lodge leadership training. They have it every year across the state, and they do one right here in Dallas at I think it's at the Anatole. I can't remember the hotel. Or no, they started holding it at the Hella Shrine Temple there in Garland. But we decided to send ours to the one that they hold in Corpus Christi. It's on the beach, not the most beautiful beach, but you still kind of have that feeling that you're getting away. It's a 6-hour drive. I've been to the last two, and you're talking about shenanigans. You know, we have a great time, and we bond and get to know each other's brothers. And the lodge leadership training that the Grand Lodge of Texas has been putting on has just been phenomenal. You know, I'm ready to go back and take classes I've already taken just to soak it all in again, because it was so much information. But us having those road trips, sitting in the car for 6 hours, a lot of what we do at Lodge has come from those drives, you know.
Yeah, you know, I've often said that a lot of Masonic education and enlightenment comes after the Tile Lodge closes and you're out maybe at a pub having some pizza and an adult drink of your choice.
So I visit a lot of lodges and on the planning committee and things like that, and I'm there to kind of survey where Freemasonry stands, and I do a lot of my own observing because I love the craft. And one of my gauges of a successful lodge is the meeting after the meeting. You know, of course,
Right.
how a stated meeting is run, it gauges the health of your lodge as well. But when it's over, is that parking lot empty in 15 minutes? Or is there people talking for another half an hour in lodge that eventually end up at the pub across the street for another hour and a half talking? That's a healthy lodge. Those are men being brothers and friends. You know, those are guys that have a unique bond to where when they decide to do some kind of improvement in their lodge or some kind of change, they're all going to be on the same page. You know, when you get that new master every year that comes through that, you know, we know him, I know your wife's name, but I probably couldn't tell you where you graduated high school kind of thing, you know, you don't know him well enough. Those bonds aren't there, you know, to support each other like we should. And it's hard to admit it, but it's human nature. You know, until we get to know each other on a more intimate level, it's hard to talk yourself out of the Cowboy Patriot game when there's a degree going on at lodge and you're like, you know what, they'll be okay. You know, I'm going to watch this ball game. They'll be all right up there. But with those bonds, you're like, I better get my butt up there.
You know, I liken it often to the Christian churches. You have the worship service, which is like our tiled meeting.
Mm-hmm.
But the pastor's up there giving a sermon. You wouldn't stand up and ask him a question in the middle of his sermon.
Yeah, yeah.
But the churches hold Bible study.
Yeah.
And there you sit around, you're in casual, probably casual dress, casual atmosphere, round a table like this, and you're studying, you know, you're reading the Bible, and then questions come up, and bang, 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 you have all that interaction.
Yeah.
And that's what you get with the meeting after the meeting.
You got it. There's the magic, because we started doing, we looked up and we were doing a lot of degrees, you know, like you said, we had a lot of candidates and our focus was on that, and we were like, hey, what are we doing so cool that's for Master Masons only? How do we enjoy being Master Masons? And we started doing something similar to that setting, to where we have a mediator and we all get in, it's real casual and formal, Master Masons only, and we're going to talk about the Master's obligation and what it means to us, and get into the nitty gritty. And I've seen men cry in those meetings, as you know, brothers. We've gotten deep and we've got some touchy subjects, and that's not going to happen in a tiled meeting. You know,
Right.
you're there for business.
My lodge, I've spearheaded a esoteric study group, and we meet at individual brothers' houses. We, you know, rotate around at brothers' houses, have some good food to get together, and talk about particular Masonic
Absolutely.
issues. Do you hold any events together with Eastern Star? Or do you work with them?
No, no, and really and truly, we used to have a pretty big Eastern Star body in this temple. They moved out because it used to be this. It didn't cost a lodge or an appendant body much of nothing to be here, and we've since been raising rent to pay for things. And as we have, certain bodies have left, and there were politics involved in that as well. But the Eastern Stars have really suffered, you know, in membership, like we have, but more so than us. You know, you see a lot of the same people getting rotated through there more so than you do in a regular lodge, to where they have trouble with manpower doing stuff together, and we have for so long. We've talked about it, you know, because we have wives that have asked about it, bringing an Eastern Star body back here that meets same nights as us kind of thing, to where our wives that were interested could come be involved, you know, because we have a few that are involved in Eastern Star, so it's coming, you know, but we've just never had that connection prior to now, since they, you know, didn't really meet in this building. And the ones that do, it's hard to catch them.
Yeah, one of the things you'll find different from Prince Hall is that when we have our annual grand communication, Eastern Star has it, and the Heroines of Jericho have it at the same time, and we meet in the same building, and when we don't meet together, we meet separately in the same building, but when we go to lunch, we all have lunch together. When we go to dinner, we all go to dinner together. When we have the banquet at the end, we're all together. So you might have 600 Master Masons, but you're going to have 700 or 800 women, sisters. And you add it all up, you're talking, you know, over 1,000 sitting in a banquet hall.
Yeah.
And, you know, you're sitting at a table of 8 people, and you've got you know, 3 Eastern Stars,
Mm-hmm.
3 Brothers, and 2 Heroines of Jericho, and you're going, oh, isn't this great? That's how I meet a lot of new Masons.
Yeah.
Because Texas is so big. I mean, I'm meeting Masons from and Eastern Star and sisters from El Paso and stuff.
Yeah.
You know,
They're hauling in then. That's a really good idea. I mean, because I know our Grand Lodge struggles with involving the wives and women at Grand Lodge. You know, of course, there's a few more of us old mossbacks rolling around Grand Lodge taking care of business, but they've struggled because many Grand Masters have tried women's program. But that'd be interesting to see, you know, having this Eastern Star.
there's a close, in Prince Hall, there's a close bond between the sisters and the brothers.
Yeah.
And they do a lot of stuff together.
Yeah.
You know, like
That's what I'm so excited about.
we hand out blankets during the winter
Yeah.
to the homeless.
Yeah.
Just driving around the city of Dallas.
There's so
And we
much.
do it together with the sisters and the
The
brothers.
sister brother, yeah.
Yeah.
There's so much that we're going to be able to learn from each other,
Right.
and what we do good and what we do bad from
Right.
each other. I'm excited.
So let me ask you, you know, it's a tough question really. Has your lodge been successful in attracting millennials, and if so, why?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, to me this is a big question because here's our future. And a lot of the young people just don't get it or just don't seem interested in this type of thing.
Here's the cat. You know,
So what's the catch?
my thing is that we've put them in a corner that they don't belong in. I could point out. I can't count on one, you know, 2 hands how many times I've heard millennials just want it given to them. They don't want to earn it. Well, who doesn't want something given to them? Hey, Fred, do you want $100? Sure, I want that $100. You know, I'll
Right.
take that. Yeah. So to say that, that's a pretty broad statement. But you know, I want to ask those people: how many millennials have you pushed to work, and see what they do? Because I don't know many that haven't when they finally find something that they want to take serious, that hadn't latched on like a bulldog. You know, they're successful in their careers at a young age. They've done the college and they did well in it. You know, anything that they kind of saw value in, they latch on to. But as soon as you start wasting their time, they're gone. You know, they've got this feeling in them, and I can relate a little bit that when you feel like your time's being wasted, it's almost a sin type feel. You know, it's like I can't. I'm doing a disservice. You know. So I had a conversation with a brother the other day that I'm so tired of millennials in my lodge on the phone, and I'm like, do you think they're trying to tell you something? You know, what does your lodge generally run like? Are they finding value in that lodge meeting or on Facebook? Because they're gonna find value in that moment. That's what they're geared toward. Give me the value. They're gonna hoard the value, and if they have to work for it, they dang sure will if it's worth it. You know, I was talking to my dad about it on the way home last night when we were driving home from lodge. You know, his generation and before it was give me the deal. Millennials are, if there's 2 TVs there and they're both 50 inches and one's $300 cheaper, the baby boomer or above is going to say, give me the cheaper one. Well, millennials are going to go, now why would I want this one over that one? And they're going to start looking at all those little details, and they're going to realize that this TV over here that's $200 more fits into their room because the sun comes through. Whatever it may be, they're going to find value and they're going to pay for it. You know, or they may find out this is a better deal, but they're going to want to know why they're going to buy one TV over another. And if we're not there to encourage them to find their why in Freemasonry, they're gone. If we start telling them their why in Freemasonry, they're gone. You know, they want to find that value, assess it for themselves, and then watch them hoard it. You know, we have one millennial in particular, Gabriel Yagish, that just came in and, you know, we said, here's your playground, man, you know, and he's a great example because he steps one way or another every once in a while. We're there to kind of put him on back track, and he gets right back on track and starts tearing it up again. And he's changing things. He's changing things in our lodge. He's teaching men their work. He's part of the podcast. He's went whole hard, you know, just whole hog into the whole thing. He's been a Mason a year, you know. Some guys that have been a part of it for a long time haven't done half the research this man has. And I'm not saying that like it's a bad thing for those men, but I'm just saying if we help them find their niche, they're going to tear it up. So if we come in and the philosophy's been make it cheaper and easier, and if we promote that philosophy, they're out the door, you know, because a lot of them do the church thing and they sit there, you know, and they get a lot out of it and it's very important to them, but they're wanting more. And Freemasonry has the goods they're looking for. We're just promoting the wrong things, you know. We do charity, we do that. Well, they do all that already, and it's important to them. We're not promoting that you bring people to a spiritual awakening. You know, you can be a part of a man's entered apprentice degree and watch him get goosebumps and become a different man. And see what that does to you. You know, when you've worked so hard on memorizing this part and you feel like, oh, I did a great job, but then you look over and you see this candidate's chin on the floor like, what just happened to me? It's a feeling you can't ever get. Getting a little goosebumpy thinking about a few brothers that have been a part of that. And these guys start seeing value in the experience of life. Actual hands-on experience. And they're looking for it. You know, again, we'll pigeonhole them and say, they want to do is stay on Facebook and this, and you're right, they will. They find value in Facebook. They stay connected with friends. But they are looking for real life experience, hands-on experience. You know, like I said before, they're going across the country to help actually rebuild. They're not donating to the Red Cross $200. They're actually loading up on a plane and putting themselves at risk to be a part of what it is to be a human. And that's what we have to offer that's so unique. But we get them in, and we either say we're a huge charity organization, or even worse, they're a Master Mason, and now we're hitting them up for who they can get in new members. We need new members, and they're going, hey, I'm your new member. What do I do now? They still need a little mentoring to get them on their track. But once they do, you got to let them, you know, let that leash off. Be ready to whisper good counsel when they come off the rail, and we all do. I do. Everybody does. We all need that mentor, and be ready to help them back on. But let them burn their path, you know.
So we have to give the searchers and seekers what they're searching and seeking for.
You got it. I mean, they go through the degrees and we arm them with tools. We fill their toolboxes with tools, speculative working tools. And then we need to let them use those tools and see what they come up with, you know, because they're going to ask a lot of questions that we may or may not have answers to, but we have to equip them with the tools to go find those answers for themselves. Because when I ask a question about the deeper meanings of a certain symbol and somebody tells me, I'm like, yeah, that's interesting. But when I'm asking about it and I find it in a book on my own free will and accord, like I just dug up a treasure chest, it creates a whole different impression in my mind that really sears it into my brain. You know, when I have that aha moment on my own accord, it's much more powerful than hearing it from someone else. They're both powerful and they're both life-changing, but there's something different when you can say, I did that, you know. I got up off the couch, turned off Netflix, and opened that book, and my gosh, if it didn't answer that question I was looking for, you know, there's some moment in there, and that's what it is to be alive. And you know, guys aren't getting that in everyday life. They've checked off all the boxes, and the millennials have just started that. You know, they're buying houses left and right, and they've done all the check marks, and they want to get hands-on with this thing called life. And we have that to offer. You know, you can get deep into Freemasonry and be a part of something special. You know?
So now we come to a really interesting topic. Not something, what we've said already is really, really interesting. And as I say to the rest of the nation and the world that's watching us, you need to listen to some of this stuff, because you don't go into a lodge every day where you see 20 people going through the degrees. And that's a common occurrence with you. But let's get on to your temple is hosting a big day, a big all-day seminar in the fall.
Yeah.
It's called Masonicon?
Texas Masonicon, and inspiration from Massachusetts. They're the originators of Masonicon, if I'm not mistaken, and that's where it came from. Loved the idea. We originally thought we would call it the Masonic Symposium, but we just kept coming back to Masonicon. So we added Texas to make it unique to us, and to kind of piggyback off of their success in a way of kind of tipping our hat at them and saying, good job, you know, we're going to borrow that.
So whose idea was it, and who is actually sponsoring? What, number 148?
Fort Worth 148, yes. And it's, you know, education is something that I'm passionate about because I love hearing other people's take on it. So it's something I've been a part of bringing into our lodge for quite some time, and it's caught on to where other members of our lodge are inviting people to speak in. And the value that we got out of there was so great, and the inspiration that put in our lodge, that it was like, you know what, I think it's time we can share this on a mass scale. And having this facility that we have, it almost felt like a responsibility, you know, so hence we're kicking it off.
How many speakers and who are they?
So we've got 9 lined up speakers, and you know, our intentions is to hopefully grow that, but this year we're going to kind of get our feet wet with 9 speakers. You're going to have 3 keynote speakers and 6 breakout speakers. And the way that's going to work is you're going to, of course, purchase your ticket, come on in and check in at about 7:30 in the morning. We'll get cracking. I think the first session is at 8:30 or so, and you'll go to a breakout speaker. That's going to be Roberto Sanchez, Brad Billings, David Bindle. Yeah, he's a great one. Let's see, John Tolbert.
I've heard him speak.
Pete Norman and Larry Fitzpatrick. All of them are very, very well versed at Masonically speaking. I've heard most of them speak, and they're inspirational as well as educational, which is a big part of what I like in speaking. So you will rotate. Sometimes you'll pick up and move rooms. Sometimes another speaker will come in and speak to you. But on this first year, you're going to hear all 6 of those breakout speakers. You're going to hear every one of them. That'll probably change in years to come. But after we complete that, and lunch will be in the middle of that, be provided with the purchase of the ticket, we will meet back downstairs in what we call the Egyptian room. It's our grand ballroom, to where we'll have tables set up, and all of us at once will listen to the keynotes. And I don't think I mentioned that for the breakouts, we're broke up into groups. So depending on the amount that we have, being the first year, we really don't know where to gauge it. But if we have 100 or so attendees, you know, we're going to break up into probably 2 groups. If we get over 200, we'll probably break into 3 groups. Over 300, so on and so forth. And those groups will rotate in between, because we want these breakouts to be very interactive and kind of have that personal feel. And if you're in a room with just over 100 men, it's hard to do that for the speaker, because you're going to be in there 45 minutes each. So you'll rotate through, and then once those are all completed, we all come down and hear the keynote speakers, which we have Michael Pohl. He's from New Orleans, very famous for his YouTube channel as well. Mm-hmm. Pierce Vaughn is from New Jersey, New York area. Very well versed in the York Rite side, where Michael Pohl's Scottish Rite and stuff. Although this will all be Blue Lodge related. And then Chuck Dunning, who you had on your last show. He made such an impression. You know, he's from Haltom City, Riverside, which is right down the road. I've been a Mason for quite some time, and, you know, always latch on to those guys that seem esoteric. You know, I want to get some. I've never even heard his name before. And so here I am at the Scottish Rite, and this man walks up there, and he starts explaining the mysteries, and he has such a way of talking.
Oh, and he was a great interview.
I'm telling you, he explains things to where it's like, you're right, Chuck. That's exactly what it means. So naturally, you know, I went up to him. I said 2 things: can we have you on the podcast, and would you speak at Masonicon? And you know, he told me, he said, you know, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I wouldn't think Masonicon would be a good idea. He said, but I've seen a real resurgence, and education and people wanting it. And he said, I think it's the time for something like this, which was very encouraging because we're putting ourselves out there. You know, my lodge is putting at risk close to $7,000 to fly these guys in. We're hoping to recoup that from ticket sales. And, you know, our idea is if we break even this year, that's great. That'll give us the money to reinvest again next year. But our hope is that, you know, this will create and perpetuate itself to get bigger and better every year.
Hello, folks. Unfortunately, the interview of Brother Rhit Moore ended abruptly due to technical difficulty, malfunctioning equipment. Fortunately, except for the wrap-up, we were done anyway. So allow me to wrap it up here. I would like to thank all our faithful viewers. You are the reason we do these videos. If you know of a struggling lodge, please send them this video. That's all for now. I am Frederick L. Milliken, parting on square. Pots.